Hey BookTube, I'm back for another video. So I intentionally tried to make a top 10 books of 2025 video, but I included 7 honorable mentions, and I ended up talking about those honorable mentions for 27 minutes. So I figured instead of rushing through my top 10 to try to keep the video at a reasonable length, I would instead make that its own video, post it on its own as just a general favorites that didn't make it out of my top 10 list, and then do a separate video concentrated purely on my top 10. So that's what this video is. It's going to be my actual top 10, and I'm going to start off with numbers 10, 9, and 8. All are on the topic of sociology, and I read for the first time a couple works on sociology, and they all made it on my top 10. So numbers 10, 9, and 8 are all works of sociology. And just before I go into the actual books, they all have a particular theme to them or structure to them, where the author does about 80 to 100 interviews of particular people about trying to create some kind of sample size in order to, and then using those interviews, using particular examples from those interviews, and then like the general overall stats from these interviews to observe a particular point that they want to make in their novel, or not their novel, in their work of nonfiction. And so number 10 is called Chemically Imbalanced by Joseph E. Davis. Joseph E. Davis, Chemically Imbalanced, and the subtitle here is Everyday Suffering, Medication, and Our Troubled Quest for Self-Mastery. And this book really stuck out to me. It was the first book of sociology that I read in the year, and it was a really difficult book because I'm not used to reading sociology, and the author is very much an academic, so he writes as an academic. And for someone who has not read sociology before, I've never even taken a university course in sociology, I was kind of playing catch up along the way, but the book is comprehensible enough that I thought that this book gave me a lot to think about, and was really, really fascinating in its arguments. So from what I remember, because I read this earlier on in the year, the book looks at ideas of depression and suffering. He divides depression from mental suffering because he thinks depression as a concept is very much a modern idea. We all have this idea of what depression is, but it's more like a general overarching term for a lot of different issues, and he thinks that blinds us to the actual issues that we're actually struggling with. And his study is more of this phenomenon of what he calls the neurobiological imaginary. So an imaginary is like this subconscious story or narrative. That's probably the proper term. Subconscious narrative that infiltrates our culture and that we all take as an assumption, and that we all just roll with, and we don't think much about it because it's just the terms of how we talk about our suffering and about our experiences. And his idea of the neurobiological imaginary is that we talk of our terms of suffering in terms of a neurobiological approach. So we think of it as like a chemical imbalance, for example, for depression. So depression doesn't have anything to do, or doesn't have much to do with my circumstances or what I'm doing in life, or myself as a character. It has everything to do with brain chemistry, and there's a chemical imbalance, something to do with serotonin or something, and I just need antidepressants, and that will help me become the person that I want to be. And that goes to what he talks about, our troubled quest for self-mastery. So his interviews interview people who consider themselves depressed, and he gets right away he rules out anyone who's actually clinically depressed, like seriously clinically depressed. He's thinking more of like the general cultural attitude of depression. People who take antidepressants who um, think of terms think of the, their suffering in terms of uh, chemically imbalanced and neurobiological issues. And so he talks about the idea of our quest for self mastery. Who do we think we should be, or that we want to be? Maybe that we have societal pressure to be, and how we despair about where we are, who we are now, and how we cannot reach this goal, and we think, and we get depressed through that imbalance between who we want to be or who we envision we should be, versus who we are now, or who maybe we have pressure through our parents or something to be this certain way, or to be this certain kind of person. Um, and it's very much self-focused, like the idea of the inner reflection and inner self, uh, and how we try to pursue this ideal, uh, and a lot of people bridge that gap uh, through neuro chemical drugs, through antidepressants, and he goes through like this history of antidepressants, and he goes through um, different aspects of this conflict in our lives, and I thought it was very profound, very deep. There's a lot to think about in this book. I'll definitely be rereading this because I know for a fact that I didn't get a fraction of what I can get out of this. I really do want to tackle this again in more depth, and really come to a grip with his arguments at a deeper level. But I thought this was very, very interesting and very thought provoking. So that's the first work of sociology that I read, and the second book of sociology that I read for number 9, it's Why Love Hurts by Eva Illouz. Eva Illouz, Illous, and Why Love Hurts. And this book is very deceptive in its trappings here. It looks like just a common book about love, like one of those cult books on culture or relationships or whatever. The cover, the title, everything about it really screams like just a popular book decrying modern relationships and whatever. But that's not at all what this book is. This book is very scholarly, sociological type book, based on the author's ideas on trying to analyze and break down how exactly do modern relationships work. And she thinks how they work is a very particular way that's very different from how relationships used to work, and it's based on our own period of time. Her term is modernity. Her analysis of love is very much paralleled to her study and analysis of modernity as a whole. So she basically is tackling this idea of modernity and the modern self, the modern relationships, relating with other people through through the analysis of love relationships, and she really does break this down so well, intelligently done. She does have interviews and stuff that she does draw on as well, and it was so smart, and so there's so much to chew on in this book. It is a very dense book. Again, Eva Illouz is very much an academic. She's very much writing like an academic, and but once you kind of get used to that style, this is not incomprehensible at all. It took me a while to read this, but it was very well worth it. It was so good and so much to chew on. Again, like the Chemically Imbalanced book. And again, like the Chemically Imbalanced book, I know that I didn't get everything out of that book, and there's a lot of my knowledge of that book that seems very hazy now. So I would love to go back to it and just dig down deeper into it, and really get the grips of her argument and whether or not or whether or not her argument stands, and how she justifies it and whatnot. But it was just so thought provoking and totally worth reading. And then the next book is the last sociological book that I read, and probably the most readable, and also I don't know if the most profound, because the others two books I don't think I fully grasped them. But this book I think is a lot more comprehensible, and it's Cheap Sex by Mark Ragnaris. And then the subtitle here is The Transformation of Men, Marriage, and Monogamy. And this book has a narrative conceit to it, where he argues that that sex has been made cheap in modern relationships and just in general. And he's not just talking about the perils of hookup culture or whatever. He thinks that sex has been made cheap by two technologies: the pill and high quality pornography, but then also the distribution of relationships through an efficient method such as dating apps, modern dating apps. So online dating. So he's looking at three forms of technology and how they have made sex cheap through the pill, online pornography, and then through modern online dating, and how these have changed the relationship landscape. And he analyzes that in this book. And this book is provocative because the author leans more on the conservative side, but he's also doesn't let that conservatism dominate the book into cheap, decrying of society. It's very, very intelligent. It's a lot more comprehensively written. He still is a rigorous academic, and that's all throughout this book. But one of the main takeaways I took from this book is his analysis of the spectrum of modern relationships, the economic aspect of modern relationships. Relationships are, we like to think of romance and relationships as like this ooey gooey phenomenon, like you're my person, you're the person for me, whatever, you fall in love, that kind of thing. And he thinks that there's a lot of unconscious economic exchange going on here. So when you're in a relationship with someone, what can you do for me, and what can I provide, and what can I bring to the relationship. So you can have someone who's like, I don't know, smart, funny, attractive, or whatever, but if they don't fit the needs of what you're looking for, you might pass over that person and go to someone else for economic give and take reasons. And there's even basic economic reasons, not in terms of like money, but money can be a factor, but in terms of give and take. So economic give and take, and it's just very, very intelligent, very thoughtful. And this book, I would also love to reread. There's a lot here to chew on as well, though. I really dug deep in my reading with this one here. I'll show you if I can find it. I did a lot of annotations during reading this book. You can see here, this is me trying to follow the argument. The light here is not. There we go. So all these different steps here, and then I annotated this book all the way through. So that was a lot of fun reading this book, and it gave me a lot to think about. Next, we actually move on to books that normal people read, something called fiction. And so the next book, I don't have a cover to show you because my e-reader is acting up as I record this video, so I can't show you a cover. Maybe if it refreshes in time, I can show you the cover before I finish talking about this book. But the next book that I read, or number 7 on my list of top 10 books for 2025, was a novel called Starting Out in the Evening. And the author is Brian Morton? There we go. that was fairly quick. I'll just quickly pull up the cover here. Yeah, Brian Morton, Starting Out in the Evening. And I can't show you the cover here, so I'll do the best that I can. So, can't really show you the actual cover here, but this is Starting Out in the Evening by Brian Morton. And that book, it's a shorter work. Chaos going here on here. Anyways, it's a shorter work. I think it's like 250 pages. But and it's a novel published in 1998, I believe, and there was a movie made in 2007. But the novel was very striking to me, not just in its writing style, but the depth and intelligence in the characters. So the premise of the novel is that we have this aging writer who is trying to work on his last book, and he is having a hard time with it. He's not satisfied with the book. He's a failed writer because all of his novels are no longer in print, but yet he continues to write in his apartment, and he's. But then all of a sudden, a young woman comes to his door, and this young woman is very, very spunky, very ambitious, young woman in her 20s, and she wants to do her master's thesis on this failed novelist. The reason being, she's a huge fan of him as a novelist, and she wants to rejuvenate his work, or at least try. And so she thinks by writing her thesis on him, and then later turning that into a book-length study of his works. I think he's got 4 books in print, or maybe 3 books in print, or no, 3 books that he's published, and then he's writing his next book, and the writing has taken years, but as part of her thesis, she wants to interview him multiple times, and throughout her writing of her thesis, she wants to glean ideas from him, and she even looks up to him in some degree through his writing. But then we get throughout the book, we get a very drastic change in these characters as this young woman basically tries to get involved almost romantically with him, but yet it's not his doing. He very much resists it as an old man who sees himself as an old man, and his wife is long dead. He's got a young daughter, not a young daughter, but a daughter who's middle-aged, and he's old-aged already, and we get that conflict between his daughter and her search for a relationship. She's getting up there in age. She's, I think, late 30s, and she very much wants to get married and have children, but she can't seem to find a man, and we get the author's own conflicted feelings, with this young woman who's very much interested in his work, and seems to be interested beyond that, because she looks up to him as like this spiritual figure that played a huge part in her early life as a reader. But then we also get the ambition of this young woman as she pulls this old man along, but yet, and then pulls back, and then that conflict between that. And it's just so smart, so reflective. Like, I was joking when I was reading that book that the whole book seemed to be, we follow these different perspectives, we get into the heads of these characters, and the book just seemed to be these characters going somewhere, reflecting about something, and then going home. And as much as that can sound boring, the author is so talented, so intelligent with his characters that I didn't mind, and I thought that was so powerfully done. And even though I didn't care for the ending kind of falls flat. The book is just so well done that it had to make my list. And then number 6 is one of the few chunksters that I read this year. and then by chunksters I mean books that are 800 to 1,000 pages long. And so number 6 on my list is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark. And this is the small mass market, but even then, it's what? My edition here is 1,006 pages. So, a fairly chunky novel. This book was published in 2004, and it is a fantasy novel, but yet it's like a historical fantasy novel. We are brought back into the era of Napoleonic England. So the Napoleonic Wars are going on, so around 1812, 1813, and we follow the character of Mr. Norrell to start off with, who claims to be the last real magician, because this is an alternate Napoleonic era where magic was real, and magic has a history, a past that is revered in England. Though no one practices magic now, it's very much a scientific, naturalistic society where no one really believes in magic. But they believe in the history of magic, and so we have these magical societies where it's just a whole bunch of old, dusty men who read old, dusty books that talk about the history of magic, but then Mr. Norrell comes along, who's very much a private gentleman who has studied magic throughout his entire life and can actually practice it, and it sparks a whole revelation in English society, and he becomes a very popular figure in English society because here's this real magician who can do real actual magic. And we also get this invocation of this alternate realm that was very intimately connected with Great Britain, the land of fairy, and this fairyland, and how it kind of mirrors and bounces between England and fairyland. But then we also get this other magician who somehow has Jonathan Strange, who somehow acquires the skill of magic almost seemingly by accident, but maybe through destiny. But yeah, it's very, very well done. 1,000 pages of this is so entertaining. One of the reviewers here on the back says, combines the dark mythology of fantasy with the delicious social comedy of Jane Austen into a masterpiece of the genre that rivals Tolkien. I don't know if this rivals Tolkien. It's hard to do that, but I would say that this certainly does capture the delicious social comedy of Jane Austen. Like, this is like Saint Jane Austen if she wrote an epic fantasy in her time, and it is so good. It's funny at times. It's thrilling at other times. Times it can be a little bit boring. That's going to be the case when you got 1,000 pages, and especially since one of the things that she does, Susanna Clark does. There's even illustrations in this edition here, but one of the incredible things that she does is that makes me think that Susanna Clark is insane in some degree, is that she has this whole mythology of this alternative Britain that she lays out in footnotes here. So there's footnotes like this in smaller print that appear all throughout this novel. All throughout this novel there's footnotes. There's even my own annotations there, where she lays out the actual history of English magic, and the mythology, the whole lore of this world. And it's written as if a scholar was writing footnotes, which is very appropriate to this book because Mr. Norrell is very much a scholarly figure, while Jonathan Strange is very much a modern figure who wants to see where magic can take him, and maybe even cross some traditional boundaries of English magic that are ungentlemanly, and that create havoc at some point in the novel. And it's so well done. It is a slow burn of a novel, but I love it. I love it. It was so entertaining. 1,000 pages flew by. I think I read this in a span of 2 weeks, which is very unusual for me for a novel of this length. And especially since I think I read 300 or 400 pages in just 1 week, which is not a whole lot if you're going to read 1,000 pages. So I read an overtime in that next week, but it was just so good. It was so much fun that it's number 6 on my list. And then number 5, I can't really show you the full cover for this book number 5 for very annoying e-reader reasons. I love my e-reader, but it does have its flaws. So I'll do my best. But number 5 on my list is a book called, it's a nonfiction work, it's called Unmentionable, and it's by Therese O'Neill, and the subtitle is The Victorian Lady's Guide to Sex, Marriage, and Manners. This is the best I can show you of the cover there, a little bit of a provocative title there. And I gotta say, this was the main surprise of my reading year. I did not expect to enjoy this book nearly as much as I did. And it's also very short. It's like 150 pages. There's a lot of illustrations and images in this book. But the whole conceit of this book is that this author, Therese O'Neill, she's going to take you back into time. She brings you back to the world of the mid to late 19th century. So she imagines that you're a young woman who wakes up in the year of 1850 or whatever. I don't think she gives a specific year, but she's generally the Victorian period. So you wake up, you're a woman in the Victorian period. She allows you to be a upper class woman in this period because you would be very it would be a very different book if she wrote this from the perspective of a very poor or somewhat middle class woman in this period. But she wants to. The whole point of this book is to dispel the myths that the romantic myths that people have through, say, movies of Jane Austen's novels or whatever, of this romantic period of everyone wearing bonnets and dresses and going through ballrooms and all that kind of stuff. Those things did happen, but they happened in a context of a world in which is very, very, very different from ours. And I think what I loved about this this nonfiction work the most is the historical perspective that she wants to give you. So she has all these different chapters on different aspects of how a lady had to exist in this world. Hygiene, all kinds of hygiene, clothing, what you wear and how you wear it, and what is appropriate to wear at what time, and propriety, social rules that you as a woman of this particular class had to follow, the different how the world was constructed. So how did you get the food that you ate, the water system, and how insanitary that was. And it is very much a book trying to gross you out or to disgust you in a way, and it's done in a very playful manner. Though my argument is that this book gets a lot more angry as it goes along, especially when she starts analyzing social rules for women, and as the period goes along about how men saw women during this period, and she paints a very crazy portrait, and it's very intentionally done. So I don't know how historically accurate you could say this book is, other than that it's very entertaining, but it's also very informative. I can't think she's totally wrong, but I think she's very much biased or very much trying to prove a point more than trying to give you straight up history. But it is so well done, so entertaining, and very funny at times. And so I loved this book. It was a book that really stuck out to me. Things like toilet paper wasn't invented until this particular period. So what did you use? Not only as toilet paper, but also for a woman's menstrual cycle. And it's just very provocative, very crazy things like that. These women have to go through this time that we don't think about these days. Um, but then that's it for that book. So now we move on to number 4. We go back to another novel. So number 4 is a novel that I actually did a whole video on, and it makes it number 4 on my list. It's a novel from, I think, 1996, I believe. 1993, sorry. And it's Body and Soul by Frank Conroy. Body and Soul by Frank Conroy. And this is my beautiful hardcover with the full-on portrait of the author there. And this is the story of a boy genius. A boy genius who has this talent for the piano. And but he comes from a very poor, working class home with his mother, who's a taxi driver, and she's very much a conflicted figure herself because she's mean and at times even abusive, but yet she's a very sympathetic character in this book. And cause she's not evil, but she's representative of her class almost. So not exactly misunderstood, but yet not exactly a good or evil figure. And but we follow how he's taken under the wing of the man who owns the local music shop, who happens to have a lot of musical connections, and he develops the boy named Claude Rowlings develops the boy's skill, and how he has this parallel life, this life where he's from, this very poor working class, almost degenerate type upbringing, yet who has this almost transcendent level of skill and work ethic, where he works his way up to scholarship after performance after performance. And I just thought that this was, despite that the whole trapping of this within music, you don't need to know anything about music to enjoy this book, because I don't know much about music, and I thought this book was absolutely thrilling. And it's very much a coming of age of this character through the opportunities given to him through his talent. And it's very well done. It's so enjoyable to read, very smart, very sympathetic too, because this boy growing up and the conflicts. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is actually the failed marriage that Claude Rowlings goes on to have as a young man. He gets married, and his marriage ends up failing, but for reasons that are very fascinating to think about, because it's not the usual, like how you think of a marriage failing, but it is very smartly done, and it's just a fantastic novel. There's even another scene that shows the trappings of hot, passionate, romantic love, which can be somewhat explicit. Somewhat, it's not super explicit, but it doesn't shy away either. But it's also shows the nature of that kind of love, and almost the wisdom that his lover has, where Claude Rowlings constantly is proposing to her during this time, and she rejects it, saying that this is just a passionate this is a passionate affair that's happening, not really an affair because none of them are married or have any lovers that they're cheating on, but it's a temporary thing that has a very emotional high that will end up coming to an end in basically. And there's one moment where they're both in their like mid to late 20s, and he proposes to her again, and she's like, "You're too old to me. I'm too old for you." But he's like, "What do you mean? We're the same age." And she says that, and she gives him this vision of what he'll be like when he's 40. This famous pianist who will be world renowned and will live a certain lifestyle, and that lifestyle will not be conducive to her own age and lifestyle. And because she's got a young daughter and she's a single mother, and she's also an academic, and it's a wonderful, wonderful moment that has really stuck with me, and it's just very wise, very uh, very smart novel. I've said that many times, smart novel, but um, if you read it, you'll know what I mean, and that's why I made a whole video dedicated to that book. Um, Number three is another novel. Another novel. If I can pull it up here, let's see if my e-reader will agree with me this time. A novel. So number three on my list of my favorite novels or favorite books of 2025 is How I Became a Famous Novelist by Steve Helly. And this novel is, let's see if I can. This novel makes it on number three because it is one of the few novels that I find myself not only thinking about but laughing with because it's a hilarious novel, and I don't know if I made an individual video on it, but I know I've talked about it on my channel before when I read it. But it's about this guy, this basically degenerate, who's living a very degenerate life. He's kind of like he's a young man who's kind of an alcoholic, who doesn't have a fulfilling job, who doesn't have a fulfilling life, and he gets an invitation to the wedding of his ex-girlfriend, and this inspires him to try to become a famous novelist by the time he goes to her wedding, so that he can prove her wrong, that he is, in fact, stable, and that his life is going well, and that he can prove to her that she made the wrong decision in dumping him and trying to marry this other guy. And so he's very much an insecure character, and it's totally from his own perspective, and it goes about how he actually tries to become this famous novelist. So what are the qualities of a contemporary novel that sells well, that is a bestseller, and he tries to incorporate all this mixing pot of things and try to incorporate it into a novel. And it's hilarious how he goes about basically how the author lampoons the publishing industry and what makes a novel popular, but he's also lampooning the idea of the novel itself, yet he's writing a novel, and it's, I don't know, the author is lampooning the novel itself, and yet he's doing this throughout the realm of fiction, and it's hilarious, but yet there's an undercurrent of genuine despair that the character feels that is actually quite serious and treated quite well, that I thought was very intelligently done. But yet there's also scenes from this novel that I just find absolutely hilarious. I don't know if I'll be able to find it now. But there is a scene, and I've talked about this before, but there's a scene where he goes to a writing workshop, like a local writing workshop, and the author that runs the workshop publishes erotica, and so there's a one point where the author reads out a section of her erotica, a passionate love scene. She reads it out to the people there, and some people are like seriously taking notes and asking like in-depth questions about the construction of her writing, but the entire thing is a joke, and it's hilarious because we get sections of her erotic novel, and we get the main character's reflections and like sarcastic wit that is just, it's so intelligently done. I want to read you a quote from it, but I don't know if I would be able to find it in time. Let's see if I could actually find it in time. But it's... no, I'm not finding it here. But another funny thing is that he has like there's a certain he thinks he can see through, like, the main character. He thinks he can see through all the famous novelists who are on bestsellers. He thinks they're all frauds, and this really starts to consume him. All novelists are frauds. Even Shakespeare was a fraud, and they're all trying to trick you and manipulate you. And he thinks the whole realm of fiction itself is a fraud, and he spirals down, and his book ends up becoming famous. The novel that he ends up writing, but not for the reasons that he was thinking. And it's hilarious, but it's also deep and thoughtful, and it made me think why I read novels to begin with. Am I reading for capital W wisdom, as the sarcastic wit of the main character likes to lampoon? So, are you reading novels for capital W wisdom, and is wonderful prose? Is that just bad poetry? And it's so well done. It's so funny, and it's a novel I'll love to reread because I think it's just so fantastic. And I think the ending, which I won't even spoil it for you, telling you the ending won't spoil it for you, but the ending is perfect. It ends with him reading a genuine, thoughtful piece of fiction where the author is not trying to manipulate you, and he thinks it is so well done, and he's like, this is a great book, I wish I wrote it, and that just ends the book of him actually reading a piece of fiction that he can tell is genuine, and that really resonates with him, and it's so perfect book. Number 2 is a work of nonfiction. It's The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols, the subtitle here is The Campaign Against Established Knowledge and Why It Matters. I actually read it as an ebook. I did not have a paper copy of it. I only recently found this paper copy. I only recently found it when going used book shopping. So I can actually show you a prompt here of the cover. But this book, it's very short, but it is so perfectly executed as a work of nonfiction. If you don't think you like nonfiction, I think you should read this book and just get a taste of what nonfiction can do. Because this book is him as an academic, as an expert, decrying the modern issues of today's culture, which could be a huge turnoff to everyone. But he's so intelligent about it, and his idea of his whole way of constructing this argument and pursuing this thesis through all these different chapters it's hard to explain the total appeal, but like one chapter is on he's talking about how we got to where we are, where expert advice and expert opinion is lampooned, or I keep saying that word lampooned, but is not taken seriously. We're in this age of where people are like, do your own research, where we don't trust media, we don't trust people who claim to have expertise. And he analyzes that idea and why that is, and how that is hurting our society. And even the little messages on this cover here are like little pieces of satire here. Like, for example, one post here says, "A book? I can find all the info I need online for free, thank you very much." Another post here says, "Is that really how you expel expertise?" And then another one says, "This title sounds like yet another elitist appeal to authority." And then another one here says, "And why do we care what this so-called expert has to say?" And it's that kind of attitude that he's thinks is very wrong-headed and very dangerous for a democratic society. And the book ends up being an appeal to citizens. If you don't want experts taking over society and that resentment of bureaucracy, you have to hold yourself accountable to be an educated, informed citizen in a democratic society that can hold experts accountable, yet also knowing when it's appropriate to listen to experts, and because experts are here to serve non-experts, at least in the realm of the public sphere, and they need to be held accountable. If but they can't be held accountable if, one, they're always shouted down by this so-called democratic appeal to knowledge, which he thinks is very harmful. But then he also dives deep into um, three different things that are different things that are wrong with how society has been. So, for example, chapter 3 is higher education. The customer is always right. So he's blaming higher education, turning to a business model of education. Uh, so, like universities are turning to a business model where profit margin is the main reason, main point, not quality of education. And so now, higher education is more about pushing out levels, quotas of degrees, how many people are getting degrees, graduating, and not so much about the quality of education, and how that has watered down actual degrees and claims to expertise. And then number 4, chapter 4 is called "Let Me Google That For You: How Unlimited Information is Making Us Dumber," where he talks about the information flux, or this fire hose of information, and how it's difficult to determine what's true and what's not true. And then he also has chapter number 5 is the new, quote unquote, new journalism, and lots of it. So it's basically him decrying the 24-hour news cycle and how that basically destroyed quality journalism, or at least severely impacted its reputation, and also its business model too. The model of journalism is now clickbait and headlines, not so much quality of information. And then his last chapter is also on when experts are wrong, and how to deal with that. And there's just so much here that is so intelligent and very very thoughtful for our current period. I think this is the book to read if you want to understand where we are at as a society and why everything is so polarized, and how maybe we could get out of that polarization, and how that is, he puts that burden on the citizens, on us, where you have to stay informed, and you have to be intelligent enough to know the limits of your own understanding. That's basically what he's calling for, and I think that's so well done. He does actually have an updated version of this. I have not read the updated version. The updated version has a red cover. This is the original from 2017. So, number one on this list will be no surprise to some people. I did a video on this book too, and it was the only book, or the only time I recall having read a book twice throughout a year, and it's A Day and a Night and a Day by Glenn Duncan. It's a short novel. It's a work of fiction, and this is easily the number one book for this year, because it is it's a short work, but it's written so well, and it is so intelligent, but intelligent in a despairing, nihilistic way, where the author is very much exploring this appeal, the seductive appeal of nihilism in a world that's growing out of religion. And yet the whole conceit of the book is very different from that. The conceit of the book is a mixed-race man named Augustus Rose, who grew up in the 60s and 70s, who, at the time of this book, I think in the 90s or whatever, the character is middle-aged, and he has been, he's being tortured in a torture cell by an American interrogator because of his affiliate with a Islamist terrorist organization. And the book is basically him in his cell reflecting on memories throughout his life, including his passionate love affair when he was in his 20s with a woman, and his subsequent life after that, and then also his life as an older man. And it's just it's all wrapped around the torture scenes between him and his interrogator. So his interrogator very much comes to respect our main character, and yet at the same time he's torturing him, um, and it's so fascinating because Harper is the interrogator's name, and he's very much this character who embodies nihilism in a triumphant way, um, and he has no values, no morals, and yet he's very fit and attractive looking, like he's a good looking man, and he's basically can do and have what he wants and be what he wants because he's also very intelligent, and yet he's uh, incredibly nihilistic. And this book is just gorgeous prose, um, just very intelligent characters and very complex ideas that are explored here. And some of these ideas that just have stuck with me throughout so much of this year. So much so that I decided to reread it. I read this originally, I think, in March or April, and then I read it back in, I think, August or September. Uh, I reread it. Oh no, I think it was August that I reread this, or maybe July. I don't know. I'm naming months now, and it's losing meaning here. But yeah, it was just fantastic. A fantastic read. It's a short read, but I'm definitely going to be reading more by this author. And I couldn't get enough of this book. I have large sections of this book that the ideas and the quotes just live rent free in my head. Even that beginning quote, or one of the quotes here in the very beginning, or it says, "He wishes he still believed in God, checks the pliable air for his presence, but of course there's nothing." And that can be seen as a microcosm of this book, of the main larger themes of this book. But then also, I wrote down here in the very beginning, I wrote down a couple of things when I was reading. This book is about broken wills with broken desires, having broken, angry, cruel sex. And so this book is very much about our base desires, our base natures conflicted with our desire, our values and our ideals, mixed in with the unavoidable, excruciating reality of human suffering. All just bound up in this one novel, and I cannot praise this book highly enough. It is so good. So I could seriously see myself just sitting down and reading this from front to back again, like right now. So that is my top 10. I am very long-winded, 53 minutes here, but these books deserved it. I had a blast reading them this year. I had such a great reading year. I hope I can say the same thing for 2026. Keep an eye out for a 2026 book about, or video about books that I would like to read this upcoming year. There's a number of books that I did not end up reading in 2025 that I would like to read this year. So I'd like to talk about those in a video, and I'll also be doing a tag video soon. So that's it for me for now. I'll leave it there, and I'll see you next time, BookTube.